Okay.
All right, Miss Christina, how are you today?
Hello, I'm good. How are you, Melissa?
Well, I'm in my sweatshirt and you're in your tank top. So
Yeah,
there's,
it's slightly warmer here
yep.
where we are.
So that just is the answer to your question. It's fine. It's fine. Ugh.
Yes.
Well, I'm excited to talk to you today and for everyone to hear all about EMDR because that's
Yes.
why you're here is to tell us all the things. And so I'm very excited about that. But before we do that, can you introduce yourself?
My name is Christina. I'm a mental health therapist. I'm a social worker, which I am really proud of, that
Yes,
social
you
work
should be.
and therapy. Yeah, so I'm in private practice. I work with adults struggling mostly with childhood traumas where I specialize. And my husband and I live in our RV, so I work remotely. So I see clients over telehealth, and yeah, we just do that kind of work. And yeah, trying to live my life with as much ease while also working. It's really important to me to instill in myself and my work with clients too, that idea of balance.
Yeah. And you have a dog.
And I have a dog. I can't believe I forgot to talk about
I
him.
know.
He's my
What in the
child.
actual?
Yeah, he's usually laying right here next to me, but he's
Oh,
actually in the window of the RV. He just lays up on the dash. Oh, yeah,
cute.
soaking in the
Oh,
sun. Yeah,
so cute.
yeah, he's my buddy.
I love that for you because I love dogs. So, yay for your dog.
Yes, you
Oh,
should
so
love it
let
for him. He's got a
oh
spoiled life.
yeah, I do love it for him, honestly.
Yeah, yes.
Here's a question. Do you like having your dog lick your face, or is that a no-go for you?
No, we really are on him about not licking our
Oh,
face or any
that is
other part
so
of our body.
sad. I love when dogs lick my face.
Oh, yeah,
Isn't that disgusting?
yeah, it's really gross.
Yeah.
But I can understand why you want to.
Yep.
It's just like
I
that
love it.
that connection. It's
I
good.
know. I'm like, can I
Yeah.
just like smush my face into your face anymore?
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I kiss him a lot. I kiss his nose.
Oh,
Like
that's
right on the nose. I make contact.
cute. Yeah.
So,
Okay, that
yeah.
counts. All right.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about your RV life, can we?
Yes, yeah. I'd love to
How
talk
did
about
this
it.
come to be? Like, tell me all the things.
Oh my gosh. Okay, let's see what so many things. Somebody just knocked on the door, I think. We're
On your
gonna ignore
RV
it.
door?
Yeah, we're at an RV park, so there's
Awkward.
people around.
Oh my gosh.
Um, so my husband and I were deciding that we didn't want to live in Spokane anymore. That's
Okay.
where I grew up in Spokane. Um, and we didn't know where we wanted to live. And it just kind of progressed. We're like, well, we should just maybe move down here. It's like, well, what if we don't like it? And we wanted to rent our house out. My husband's a contractor and he wants to start getting into kind of investing and rental
Okay.
properties and stuff. I
Sure.
was like, well, I don't know, let's just live in an RV for a while and that'll free up some money and you can do your investing stuff and we can find out where we want to live. And then it just kind of morphed and we're like, well, we don't because we were going to move down to a specific place and live in an RV. We're like, well,
Okay.
why would we do that? Like, let's just
You can
travel
travel.
around.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we don't have kids, so
Uh-huh.
it makes it easy for us to just kind of pick up and go.
Yeah.
So yeah, we just decided to travel and we love to travel anyways. So now we're living in the RV, traveling around, trying to find somewhere that we love a lot that we want to move to. And parts of it we love. It's like
Yeah.
everyone thinks it's so cool and it is so cool,
Yeah.
but also there's some parts that are really hard.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
I can
yeah,
imagine. Like, I feel like for me, it would be not being able to just like see my mom whenever I want to, you know?
yeah, yeah.
That would be really hard.
There's I had some grief this week because we talked about we love Prescott, Arizona. We were just there. We
Okay.
stayed
Uh-huh.
longer there and we talked about moving there and I had this like really weird wave of uncertainty and grief
Yeah.
and so that was weird because
Yeah.
it's like I've never lived away from my family all lives in Spokane and our whole life all we have
Yeah.
really good friends there and we want to move and it's exciting but yeah, it was also like, whoa, maybe we're
Yeah.
not ever going to live in Spokane again, and away from family, and that's been hard too, that transition of just not, like, I'm on telehealth all the time with clients.
Yeah.
I'm on the phone with my family. Like, there's a different level of connection that we're
Totally.
getting. And then it's just Bill and I together all the
Yeah.
time. And so there's really good growth in our marriage and really like hard things in our marriage
Right. Yeah.
too.
I mean, spending that much time with somebody can be
Yeah.
hard. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's just lots of things, but we get to do cool things all the time. Like, we're in Flagstaff right now, and
Okay.
Bill just left to go mountain biking, and we're just gonna see a bunch of cool stuff. So it's
And
definitely worth it.
I mean, you're in Flagstaff, so have you seen the Sister Wives yet? Because that
No,
is my jam. Oh my gosh. Do you know about the Sister
I don't
Wives?
know what you're talking about. What am I
There's a
missing?
show on TLC that is all about the
Oh,
Sister Wives, and it's just so crazy. But anyway, sorry. I digress.
no, I'll look into it. We just got here
Do it.
yesterday, so we haven't done
Okay,
much
maybe you'll see him. Maybe
exploring.
you'll see him walking around town.
Oh, I'll send you all the pictures if I do.
Okay. So what has been your I think maybe you just already answered this, but what's been your favorite place so far?
Well, for living,
Yeah.
Prescott, Arizona,
Okay.
we're like 95% sure we're gonna move there
Okay.
after our adventure's over. But I loved California and being on the ocean.
Oh, yeah.
I think
Oh,
probably
yes.
Morro Bay. It's right outside
Okay.
of San Luis Obispo. It's this little tiny beach town. I just loved it there so much. And if we could live
Oh,
there, I would, but
yeah.
it's too
It's
expensive. And
expensive. Yeah.
owning a small business there is not realistic in California,
Sure.
unfortunately.
Yeah.
But that's my favorite place.
That's
It
so
was
cool though
amazing.
that like you can just go there and like live there for a
Yeah,
week if you want.
yeah. And we went
Crazy.
back. We went
Oh,
there
see. Yeah.
and then went somewhere else, and we went back for a while because we liked
Yeah.
it so much.
That's amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
I love that you are living your life this way because,
Thank you.
mostly because you're warm and I'm not, but also because it just sounds super cool. So, yay.
Yeah,
Okay.
it is cool. It's fun.
So let's talk about EMDR, shall we?
Yeah, I can't
So,
wait. I get excited talking
yeah,
about it.
I know, and that is why I wanted you to come on and talk about it. So, I do talk about several things all the time on this podcast, and one of them is EMDR. And
Hmm.
so I've had a few people come on and just kind of like touch on it a little bit, but I really would love to go into more detail about what it is and
Hmm.
how is it used and how would you know if you would use that modality, all the things. So yeah, just tell us what EMDR is.
Okay, so, oh, where do I even
I
begin?
know, right?
So
The
we're
beginning.
not supposed to, the very beginning.
Yeah. No, I'm
So
just kidding.
I'm not going to start at the beginning.
Okay.
I could go really clinical, like, well, it's
I know, right?
discovered. But it actually hasn't been, we haven't been using it that long. It's been about 35 years of been using EMDR, which is
Okay.
crazy, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But there's so much, they have done so many studies to show that it's an evidence-based treatment, which
Hmm.
basically means that they've done a bunch of studies and it works.
Yeah.
Um, so that aside, um, I like to explain it. We're not supposed to call it magic, but I
Yeah.
feel like it's magic.
Yeah.
It's the only way that I've ever come across that we can shift our perspective from, we always have this logical thought of, I know it wasn't my fault, or I know that I'm safe now,
Hmm.
but our gut feeling is
Hmm.
like, I'm still really scared, or there's all this shame, or
Hmm.
I know it was my fault. Like, I shouldn't have been drinking at that bar. I shouldn't have blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And it's the only thing that I know that can actually remove that.
Hmm.
Like those thoughts aren't even a part of your experience anymore of the trauma after going through EMDR.
Hmm.
So it's moving you from a maladaptive thought process around what happened to an adaptive one.
Yeah.
So it's not magic in the sense of it makes it go away. So if
Sure.
something really hard happens to you, you're still going to know it happened to
It
you.
happened.
You're
Yeah.
still going to remember it, but you're going to see it from a perspective that's like, I'm okay now. I can
Hmm.
move forward and I can be safe in the future, or, um, you know, it's not my fault, or I don't have to carry this
Mhm.
shame with me.
Yeah. So how does it work? Like, talk us through if you had a new client and you were like explaining to them, I think we're going to use EMDR. Here's what it is. Like, tell us what it is.
Okay, so it uses bilateral stimulation, which is just
Okay.
a fancy word for back and forth movement. So the bilateral kicks on right side of the brain, left side of the brain, and you're just going back and forth between both sides of the brain.
Okay.
Um, and really, we find bilateral in in nature and everything that we do. So even going for a walk is bilateral, and
Because you're
so
doing right,
bilateral is just part
left
of our, yeah, right, left. It's just part of our
with your
human
feet. Yeah.
experience to do
Hmm.
this back and forth. Riding a bike is bilateral.
Sure.
You're just doing this back and forth movement, and it just helps the brain process. And with EMDR, we take really specific events, and I do my stuff on my end that helps. Like, we're really going to pull up this memory, and so it can be a really intense experience because I
Hmm.
need you to really relive what happened. So we
Hmm.
pull up this memory and we target it, and then we use the bilateral to reprocess it.
Okay.
So EMDR is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing.
Okay.
So you know that you're in the room with me still, or over telehealth. You know that we're in session together. You're not back in the moment, but you are in essence kind of reliving it. So
Hmm.
some people will really experience it like they're remembering sequentially what happened, and they're going
Sure.
through the entire memory. Sometimes it's more chaotic than that as you process, and it mirrors our organic way of processing. So we're not doing
Okay.
anything weird. You're not hypnotized. You're completely present.
Yeah.
Um, and when we sleep, we process. So when you sleep, your eyes go back and forth. If you've ever seen
Mm.
somebody, or sometimes their eyes are open, and you can watch
Yeah.
like your partner sleep, and you can see their eyes moving back and forth.
Yeah.
And that's because they're processing their day.
Okay.
And that's why one of the reasons sleep is so important is because we need to process our day. That's how our brain will move and kind of file it away. So we
Hmm.
want it to be filed away appropriately. And so it's using that same process to go back and revisit those memories and file it away appropriately. If
Okay.
it's not filed away appropriately, you're going to have symptoms like the memory will be really, really vivid,
Hmm.
or it'll come back to you intrusively when you don't want it to.
Hmm.
And that's all
Is
that right
that,
brain stuff.
yeah, is that like when you hear people say, "Oh, that triggered me. I was triggered." Is that what that is?
Yeah.
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 Okay.
I think sometimes triggered is kind of an overused word
Totally. Yeah.
in our society, but like an actual trigger is
Yes.
something reminds you so much of the traumatic event. And when I say trauma, it can be like, it could be something really awful, really like a physical harm happens to you, or it could be an emotional trauma. It could be
Sure.
something, like a really bad breakup after being with somebody
Yeah.
for 6 years or whatever. And that really
Yeah.
sticks with us. And so you have a fight with your new partner, and you have this like visceral experience of, oh my
Hmm.
God, this is what it felt like when so and so was broke up with me. And
Sure.
then it colors the way that you see your current relationship. And then it unfortunately aids to bad decision making or impulsive decision making or emotional decision making.
Hmm.
That's not accurate.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so the bilateral that you talk about, I have heard. So I know that it can be virtual or in person, and that
Yes.
there's different ways to do that bilateral. And I have heard some people say, "Oh, doing it virtually isn't as good," or "You really need to be able to hold the paddles." Can you talk a little bit more about the bilateral part of it, and is there any
Yeah.
truth to that?
Um, I mean, yeah, I think there's truth to most everything. I think that is probably true maybe for that person that said that. They need to be
Sure.
in
Okay, that's
person.
fair. Yeah.
Um, and so since I'm telehealth only, how I work with clients is I have a system where they can watch a dot on the screen. And so their
Mhm.
eyes are going back and forth. Um, and a lot of times I have clients do their own tapping where they'll cross their arms over their chest and they'll tap back and forth,
Okay.
and they'll just follow me. I'll just tap with them.
Okay.
Or once they get the flow, they can close their eyes. And then I'm watching them to make sure they're going at the speed they need to go.
Mhm.
And then you can also do it with audio and back and forth in your ears. Um, the benefits of in person is there's this energetic regulation that happens that
Mhm.
I can't provide my clients because I'm over telehealth.
Mhm.
And so there are some clients that unfortunately I can't work with, or I'll refer them to in person because they need more
Yeah.
regulation. They're not able to self-regulate yet. They
Sure.
will be able to, but
Yeah.
and so most of my clients, they're able to self-regulate, or we do a lot of work up front to make sure that they can regulate. So there are benefits to in person.
Okay.
Um, but telehealth, you can get, you can process just as much over telehealth.
Yeah.
It really just depends on your preference and if you're really wanting that in-person connection with the clinician.
Yeah.
But all of my clients have lots of success processing over telehealth.
Okay. Okay. And then what about kids? Is there like an age,
Oh,
a minimum age?
yeah, that's a great question. So, I used to do a lot of work with kids. I don't work with kids anymore right now in my career, but um, I love doing EMDR with kids. I worked with
Okay.
kids anywhere from age 3 and up, and
Okay.
I did EMDR with all of them. You just get a little bit more creative.
Sure.
So we would sword fight and talk about hard things that
Oh,
happened, and
okay.
that's
Yeah.
bilateral. We would do sand tray is
Okay.
bilateral because you're they'll be talking to me about what's happening, and then they're doing the creativity, which is all right brain stuff in the sand, and so
Oh,
that's bilateral, and they're
yeah.
processing. And
Okay.
so with my adult clients, we're like, okay, we're going through this EMDR protocol. The questions are
Yeah.
the same. They're assessing how distressing it is. And with kids, you're not going to do that.
Sure.
But the clinician's just kind of gauging, um, what's their body language when they're talking about
Okay.
this hard thing that happened. So you can definitely do EMDR with kids of all ages.
Yeah. How do you know if a client is ready for EMDR or that it would be a good fit for them?
Um, I I think you can use EMDR for almost everything.
Okay.
Um, I think it helps with almost everything. We all have gone through hard things,
Yeah.
and most of us have experienced some sort of trauma. And I think it's hard to it's hard to make it tangible of when I know a client is ready. I think when you're looking for an EMDR therapist, one of the things to look for is just kind of this intuitiveness. And
Mm.
EMDR can be really, there's exact protocol that you're supposed to follow in EMDR, but really there's a lot of intuition on the
Okay.
clinician's part.
Sure.
And this is what I'm feeling where the client's at. And so for me, I rely a lot on that. Like I'm pretty sure you're ready to dive in,
Okay.
and you're kind of gauging. But there are like, the clinician will do some assessment of like, are you dissociating? And they'll go
Mhm.
over all of those things. Um, but really, I mean, even if a client shows up and like, gosh, I don't know if they're ready. They have a lot of emotional reactivity. They're having a hard time regulating throughout the week. Sometimes I'll just throw them in because I
Yeah.
know EMDR is going to help them, and they're
Yeah.
already so dysregulated. It's like, well, how much worse can it get? Let's just
Yeah.
like try some of this, because it one of the side effects of EMDR is integration and confidence, which
Yeah.
is good side effects.
Yeah.
So it's hard to tell when a client's ready. Sometimes it's a guessing game, sometimes it's just intuition.
Yeah. What about with kids? Like, I just think of the population that I work with, which is
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the kids have experienced some sort of adversity. And how do you know if EMDR is maybe the next step for a kiddo?
Mm-hmm. Um, well, I think probably the biggest sign is if they've been through something traumatic.
Yeah.
But again, it's like we all go through hard stuff. And
Yeah.
even if there's like, I don't want to say it's something little because I don't want to minimize anybody's experience, but
Like
like
a little
if we're
T
not going to
trauma.
call it like a little T trauma, if we're not going to
Yeah.
call it trauma or a little T trauma, even like going through divorce or something is
Yeah.
super hard on kids. Like I would actually call that pretty traumatic for
Yeah.
kids.
Sure.
Um, I mean, really, I used it all the time with kids,
Okay.
whether it was like a case of trauma or not.
Yeah.
And kids are much more resilient than adults. when
Mhm.
we're talking about emotions,
Mhm.
because they haven't been taught by society that they need to do anything different other than feel
Sure.
what they're feeling.
Yeah.
And so actually with kids, it's slightly easier to just kind of go in and do a little EMDR with them and they bounce back faster. Where some of my clients,
Yeah.
it's 2 or 3 days, they're
Yeah.
having a lot of fatigue. And with kids, it's like they're
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
used to feeling their emotions.
Mhm. Do you find though that like with either kids or adults that if they are not in like a safe relationship outside of therapy that can actually counteract their ability to
Mm-hmm.
make progress?
Um, yes, yes. And I think it would just depend. I
Okay.
mean, I would still do EMDR with someone even if they were in a place where they weren't necessarily safe,
Okay.
if that's what they were wanting to do. So it would
Yeah.
really be collaborative.
Yeah.
If it's a child, it's really, clinical best judgment.
Yeah.
Um, but if you think about it, like let's say it's a kiddo and they're 5 or 6 and they're living in a traumatic environment. If you're doing some EMDR with them, at least it's not building up. Like
Yeah.
you're helping them process it and move through
Yeah.
it then, so that once they get to 16 years old or 18 or 25, they don't have all this stuff that they're carrying. So you're helping them move through it. And for kids, I don't, again, it would depend. I don't want to,
Yeah.
I'm kind of speaking generally, but I don't see how it would be that harmful. It depends on the situation, I guess. If it's
Yeah.
really unsafe, they'd be removed from the home
Totally.
anyways.
Yeah. They wouldn't even be there.
Um, but if like
Hopefully.
maybe there's not, yeah, um, maybe there's not an emotionally safe adult in the home
Yeah.
to talk about their emotions, I still think they should do EMDR. It's going to help them feel
Yeah.
better. And we're taking out some of that layers that they're storing in their body.
Yeah. So, okay. So you talked about how EMDR, how it kind of like helps separate like the visceral feeling or the visceral reaction from the memory, right? Am I
Mm-hmm.
saying that right? But then
Yeah.
yeah, so then what happens once you do that? Then is there like I heard you say at one point like and then install like what happens next?
Yeah. So we go through, so in the very beginning of a memory, um, well, we can just go through the protocol.
Yeah, let's
So
do that. Let's do that.
So what happens is we would pick a memory. So Melissa, you pick, whatever memory part, like a car accident, maybe you
Yeah,
got
sure.
in a car accident. So then I would want you to imagine. So we want to turn on different parts of your brain.
Okay.
And so I'm going to ask you these same questions in every memory because I need all of these parts of your brain to be active to really bring up the memory fully. And
Okay.
so the first question I'd ask you is, what image do you see in your mind when you think of this car accident?
Okay. Okay.
And you might see,
Just
I don't know,
yeah. So
whatever
many
you're
different
seeing.
things could happen. Yeah.
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 So you describe the picture, and that's going to turn on one part of your brain, the right side of your brain over here.
Okay.
Um, and then I'm going to ask you what your negative belief is about yourself because of
Okay.
this event. So typically, when something is sticking with us as a trauma, it's because we've internalized it
Mhm.
negatively about
Mhm.
ourselves or the world. So it could
Mhm.
be that I'm a bad driver. I should have
Mhm.
been paying attention.
Mhm.
Or nobody's safe. No one else can
Mhm.
drive safe. Now I can't. Now I'm like too scared to get on the road.
Yeah.
So what's the negative cognition attached? And then we would identify the positive cognition. And the
Okay.
positive cognition is what you want to believe. And typically
Okay.
this is like, doesn't really feel very true. You're
Yeah.
like, yeah, I want to believe that it was just an accident and it's never going to happen again, but I do not
Yeah.
feel that way.
Okay.
But we identify it anyways because that's where we want to move to,
Yep.
or at least in that direction.
Yeah.
And then we identify how distressing does it feel to you as we talk about it. Maybe it's at, on a scale of 0 to 10, maybe it's at an 8, which is pretty
Sure.
high level of distress. And then I would ask you where you're feeling it in your body,
Okay.
because one of the most important parts of EMDR is that somatic
Mhm.
processing, because we
Mhm.
store all of our trauma in our
In our
body. And
body.
so
Yeah.
we really need to identify where we're feeling it.
Mm-hmm.
So, and usually it's like instant clients that where you're
Yeah.
feeling it. Once we bring it up,
Yeah.
it's like, I'm feeling it right here.
Yeah.
And then we just start processing. So then I'll say,
Okay.
notice these things. And then you just start doing the bilateral.
Okay.
And it's not talk therapy. So you're doing the bilateral and I'm just kind of staying out of it. And
Okay.
I'm always paying attention to facial expressions and body language to make sure the client's doing okay. And
Okay.
then we just check in periodically. What are
Okay.
you noticing? And you
Okay.
just go through whatever's coming up. And then once you get, and every now and then I might ask you, how distressing does it feel to you now?
Okay.
And
Okay.
eventually
Just to
you'll get
kind
to
of
a
gauge
zero.
the, sure. Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah. And I'm watching for things like every now and then I might ask what image comes up now. And
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times it'll change. So at
Yeah.
first maybe you're in the car and all you can see is the car coming at you.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually you might be, oh, I don't know, like I'm still in the car, but I'm seeing it from way up here.
Yeah.
I'm like
Yeah.
looking down on it now.
Okay.
Or it's really fuzzy, or I don't see anything. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm looking for these things where I can tell that it's shifted.
Yeah.
And then once it gets to a zero, we'll install the positive cognition. So let's
Okay.
say it wasn't my fault.
Yeah.
And then we install that with a slow bilateral.
Okay. Yep. And I think that was kind of getting to my question is what does that mean when you say install that? But you just slow the bilateral
Yeah.
down to
Yeah.
change the what they think about themselves.
Yeah. So if you've already moved, you already believe that it wasn't my fault
Yeah.
and maybe I'm safe now, I can drive.
Yeah.
And so that feeling typically feels pretty strong. You're like, yeah, I feel that. That
Yeah.
feels right. And then we just want to like solidify it. We
Yeah.
just want to
Yeah.
make it like really concrete in your body. And so if you're watching the dot will just go much slower and you're just going
Mm-hmm.
to think about those words and we're just installing that positive belief. But
Yeah.
we don't want to install it until it's actually you feel like it's
There.
true.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
How what if you don't get through in one session? What if at the end of the session they're still not there?
So then which happens most of the time. Most of the
Okay.
time, you're not going to
Okay.
process in one session, especially
Okay.
if your sessions are 50 minutes long.
Mhm.
I mean, it happens, but not often.
Okay.
So beforehand, we do a lot of prep work of containing any emotional distress in between sessions. So I teach the
Okay.
client how to do it. It's called the container exercise, which I can send you a link for a
Yeah,
YouTube
that would be great.
video
Yep.
and
Okay.
you can add it to the show notes so
Yep.
clients can, because that's good. It's a good skill for anyone to have and to use all of the time. So if
Mhm.
you're struggling with any emotional distress, you can use the container exercise.
Okay.
So I teach clients how to do that. So
Sure.
then we regulate, we'll pause, and I try to pick a spot where it's not too hard.
Sure.
Um, and then we regulate, and I help them kind of contain the memory until we come back for the next time.
Okay.
And typically, we want to just keep focusing on that memory until it's at a
Yeah.
zero, however
Okay.
many sessions it takes.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Mhm.
Okay. So how do I mean, you kind of already alluded to this, but how do people find a good therapist who does EMDR? Like, what are they looking for? If they're like, yeah, I think that I'm ready to move out of talk therapy and do something a little bit deeper and do EMDR, how do they find a good therapist?
Well, um, just like a black and white answer is I would go to
Okay.
emdria.org
Yep.
because Emdria is and I'll give you that website too so you can add it, but Emdria is they train people and
Okay.
they have the best trainers. And so if somebody is trained through Emdria, that's going to be a
Okay.
really solid clinician usually.
Okay.
Um, I think, and on Psychology Today, you can put in like, I want an EMDR therapist.
Okay.
So you can search for them that way. But then on a more kind of um, delicate way of trying to find a clinician, I think it's really hard to find one that you really connect with.
Mm-hmm.
And I always tell my clients, fit for me is really important. If,
Mm-hmm.
on my end, if I'm not connected with my client, it's going to be hard for me to really be in it with them.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're not connected to me, they're not going to trust me.
Yeah.
And so it's vital. And we're not going to like everyone, right? Like Like I'm a good clinician, but maybe I wouldn't be the best fit for somebody, and that's
Yeah.
totally fine, or vice versa. So I think I would just really encourage people to make sure it's a good fit.
Okay.
And I think a good gauge is like, do I feel safe with this person? Do I
Okay.
get on session and or step into their office and feel just this sense of safety?
Yeah.
Because the only way that we can be fully connected and process any trauma or really make any movement in therapy at all, whatever kind of therapy you're doing, is if you have this, like that your vagus nerve is relaxed and safe.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
if you can feel that felt sense of safety, then I think you have a good therapist.
Yeah. That's fair. That makes sense. And it's okay to say, hey, I don't think that we're a good fit. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yes. And
It's
a
not a
little
bad thing.
secret, if you don't think it's a good fit, if you're like, I don't know if this is the right therapist, I promise you your therapist is thinking it too.
Yeah. Well, and it's okay to say that to them and just
It
like
is.
process it.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so okay. So then I am just curious if you already said like the container exercise you're going to send us.
Hmm.
I'm going to have that linked in the show notes. But what are some other things that we can do maybe in between therapy sessions, or if we are just
Yeah.
like I really am not quite ready to go to therapy yet, what are some things we can do on our own
Yeah.
that can help with healing?
Yeah. Well, if you check out my Instagram, I have lots of tools on there that I try to
Okay.
put up regularly.
Okay.
Um, just a little shout out for myself there, but
Love
you
that.
can
Love
find
that.
lots of tools. Um, One of the things that I have all my clients do is listen to EMDR bilateral music on YouTube.
Yeah.
And you just look
Okay.
up EMDR bilateral music.
Okay.
And I think there's at least 4 or 5 different ones. And as long as it says bilateral in there.
Yeah.
And you have to wear headphones. So you
Okay.
just pop your headphones in and listen to it because it'll go back and forth in your ears.
Okay.
Um, that can be super regulating. And you don't have to like sit and be like calm listening to you can be like doing the dishes or
Yeah.
going for a walk or doing anything.
Okay.
Probably not driving, but anything
Okay.
else.
Okay.
That any type of guided imagery, I do
Okay.
guided imagery a lot with my clients, and
Mm-hmm.
it's it's really working the right side of your brain,
Okay.
because when we've gone through trauma, the right side of our brain gets a little detached
Mm-hmm.
from working as much, and that's what's holding all the implicit stuff. So we experience emotion in the right side of our brain, and then the left side of our brain will label it. So we
Okay.
have a body sensation, that's all right brain stuff. And so we just want to work that part of our brain for
Mm-hmm.
healing. So guided imagery, meditation, yoga, any movement, anything,
Okay.
any creative. If you're creative, you can do artwork.
Okay.
um, the other thing that's kind of cool to do is journaling. And if you're not into journaling, just just jotting down your thoughts every now and then without any expectation, because writing's bilateral.
Okay.
So not typing. I mean, I guess maybe typing's bilateral, but you get a lot of like pen to paper is going to be
Yeah.
the most effective.
Okay.
And you can get access to your subconscious through writing. You'll get
Okay.
access to things that you didn't have just by talking. So those are
That's
some
cool.
little tricks.
Okay. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, okay. Well, we are actually already coming to the end of our time. Can you believe this?
Oh my
Christina,
gosh, that
I
went so
know.
fast.
I know, right? So I just have
Yeah.
2 more questions for you though. So the first one
Okay.
is, what do you wish more people knew about trauma?
Mm. The first thing that comes to my mind is that it doesn't separate you from people.
Mhm.
And I almost everyone has been through trauma, and I would risk saying that everyone has experienced trauma.
Yeah.
And I think it makes us feel separate when we've gone
Yeah.
through something hard. It makes us feel like we can't connect anymore. And
Mhm.
it's absolutely not true. We can still
Yeah.
connect.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. Well, and it does sometimes feel like, we are in it on our own when we are experiencing something
Yeah.
big. Um, and I almost feel like, at least for me, it feels like human nature to just like take care of it in my own little bubble
Hmm.
and not let
Yeah.
others in and not tell the, my besties, or just like, we're just going to deal with this
Mm-hmm.
in, but
Yeah.
the reality is, like, when we do let others in, they are like, I see you, so I
Yeah.
love that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So what would be 3 resources that you would recommend to people who are, maybe starting their journey towards healing, or maybe
Mm.
already like well on their way? What are some 3 resources that you recommend?
Um, oh my gosh. I have like a million books just came to mind.
I love that.
1 million.
Let's write them all
Um,
down, or let's put them all in the show notes.
so actually one of them, this is a perk of RV life, is my like everything's in reachable distance right here.
I love that. Yeah.
Because it's so small. So Invisible Heroes
Okay.
it's survivors of trauma and how they heal.
Okay.
This book is full. I pull this out all the time with clients because it has a bunch of guided imageries in the back.
Oh, I
Um,
love that. Okay.
but it's just like the body keeps a score,
Okay.
but maybe a little less clinical. The body
Okay.
keeps a score is a little clinical, and this one's a little bit more easier to read.
Okay.
Um, so this is a good one.
Okay.
Um, another resource, do some yin yoga, like
Okay.
as much yin yoga as you can do, or restorative yoga,
Okay.
just kind of slowing down the nervous system.
Okay.
Um,
Would you say that that should be in person, or could they find something on YouTube?
I would say do what you have time for in your life.
Okay.
If you
Yeah.
can go in person, that's fantastic. But if you don't have time, do a 10-minute YouTube video.
Okay.
Find what works for you.
Okay.
And then, um, man, there's so many like podcasts and stuff. Um, there's a podcast, it's called Therapist Uncensored,
Okay.
and they have been doing their podcast. There's so many seasons on there. There's literally every issue that you've ever experienced.
Sure.
And they give really good advice. It's kind of geared towards clinicians, but when I listen to it, it's like, I don't
You get
know,
stuff out of
anyone
it.
could listen to it and you can
Hmm.
get stuff out of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Mhm.
Cool.
And
Okay.
me, you can always find me.
And you, yes.
That's
And what
four.
is the name of your, because I know that you're not Christina on Instagram. So
Yes.
tell us, what are
Yeah.
you? Who are you?
Uh, Santoja therapy. Santoja is Sanskrit. It's a yoga niyama, and it means contentment. So that's what I
Okay.
focus my therapy on, is finding contentment.
Love it.
But yeah, Santoja therapy, and yeah, I love
Okay.
giving resources and any free stuff to clients that I can. So you can track me down, and I'll help with anything I can.
Yeah. I definitely follow you on Instagram, and and honestly, like, I just love seeing, like, when you're on the beach and in
Yeah,
the
I do
warm
post some of
weather.
that stuff. Yeah,
It's all
it
good
is
though.
fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
where are you off to next after Flagstaff?
Um, well, actually, we're going over to Albuquerque in a week, and then I'm flying home to Spokane for a few weeks. So I'll be in Spokane for a couple weeks.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
exciting. Well, if you wouldn't mind bringing the warm weather with you, we would
I
appreciate
will,
that.
because if it's not going to be warm, I'm leaving. I
I
won't
know,
stay.
right? That's what I feel every day of my life. Why am I here? I'm just kidding.
Oh my
Okay,
gosh.
well, make sure that you send me pictures of the sister wives when you see them.
I
And
will. I will.
I really had fun. Thank you, Christina. I
Yeah,
appreciate
thank you for
all your
having me. This
knowledge.
was great.
Yeah,
This was
cool. Do you have
awesome. Thank
anything
you.
else? Do you feel like there's anything that we missed that you want to make sure that people hear?
I could literally talk for 2 more hours about it. I think really I just want people to know that you can heal,
Yeah.
and it doesn't matter how much trauma you've experienced, that you can move through it,
Mhm.
and also you don't have to process all your trauma to feel better. You will
Yeah.
start feeling better much sooner. Um, I mean, usually clients, it's like 6 to 8 sessions and they start feeling better.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's possible.
Yeah, and I feel like, at least even
Mhm.
for me, like, once you kind of round that corner and you start to notice that you're feeling better, then it just gives you that more motivation to keep moving
Yeah,
forward and
yeah,
keep doing the
yeah,
hard work. So, yeah.
yeah. Makes it easier.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, go sit
Okay.
out in the sun with your doggy while we are here in the cold weather. I'm just
Yes, I'll
kidding.
be thinking of you.
Okay. And thanks,
Thank you
Christina.
so much,
Yep.
Melissa.